Alright, hello everyone, MrPBJ's here today. So now, there's only two ways that this video can go. I can turn supersonic, or I cannot. It just depends on what happens and how it goes. Got many different thumbnails in the counter. But either way, yeah, we are playing Sonic Mania. If this is the first video that you're finding and you're like, hey, what's this all about? You know, you can just watch this one, or you can go in order, whichever one floats your boat. And I'm plotting and analyzing everything, and honestly, we only have one more Chaos Emerald to go before we end up, you know, basically having all the emeralds and the ability to turn into supersonic. But before I even discuss that, let's talk about the drama, the tea, the spill, the fact that every single time that I record, annoyingly so, the recording just absolutely cops out, and that's because I'm doing this on my phone, and like I hope all phones, I just have way too much storage data on this thing, and what makes it even worse, for some odd reason, all the storage on my by golly iPad, it has combined it with my phone, and I have a ton of stuff on my iPad. So honestly, that's the whole thing of what makes it kind of annoying and stuff like that. But hey, it is what it is, you know? Gotta work through the grind and all that kind of stuff, and I'm just hoping that, yeah, you guys hear me all the time, and I sound like a broken record at this point. But no, yeah, seriously, it's a real problem. Like, my phone just keeps copping out, and the whole thing, it's recording, but it'll only give me the last half. And now we have the ability to turn into supersonic. You know? So, that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. Anyways, I mean, I could turn into him right now, and then all that stuff would be, you know, of course I can't. I need 50 rings, of course. But trust me, we're just gonna hold on to it for the while being. We're not gonna do any crazy supersonic stunts or whatnot. Only because anytime I play a supersonic, you know, it just makes the game a whole lot more boring. And even talking on what's kind of boring is not the stage. I shouldn't say that. The stage is okay. Although I was saying before in my previous playthrough that it doesn't exactly make a lot of sense. What the fudge? Oh, we're here. Well, isn't that awesome? Dude, I'm so unfamiliar with this specific special stage. Yeah, I'm totally going to get creamed. Like, what the freak? Jeez, man. Yeah, this is crazy. Yeah, sorry if you're witnessing this for the first time, and I'm going to not bore you, and I'm just going to whomp. Yes, purposefully dying. That's my specialty. But yeah, I mean, it's Press Garden, and I mean, my whole thing about it is that it doesn't really make sense within the vibe of Sonic. Because, I mean, when has Sonic, besides plushies, ever been kind of compared or associated with, you know, printing press, unless you talk about maybe the idea of comics, Sonic comics, and them getting translated and stuff, which was something I keened on to. Which, I guess, fair enough. But in all honesty, when it comes to just, yeah, I guess if I go off the topic of video games and talk about cartoons and all that kind of stuff, I think one of the most interesting things in regards to this game's success, if I can spin it in a way that relates to Sonic Mania, is the fact that the characters don't talk. And if anything was English or what have you, it's kind of like weird. These could look like hieroglyphics to, like, you know, majority of the world that doesn't know how to speak English. And that's not offensive, because English is a very hard language to actually learn. I mean, besides all the slang that we have, I mean, you know, like bet and, you know, what's up, even though we say what's up, and what's up is like, for other people, probably is like, what the fudge is actually upwards. But no, in all actuality, like, you know, we have different versions of the same word. The same word will literally mean just borderline different things, you know? And we're not even getting political with the whole thing of what is a woman or something like that. It's just literally English in itself. I mean, if you want to know my whole justification of, like, everything about, I guess, not the politics of English, but just what English actually is and my whole philosophy on it and how it's used in a society and language entirely, it's kind of like a thing where it's like, in order for language to actually have meaning, it has to have fixed meaning, which means it has to only mean one thing, and that one thing only. And it kind of depends sometimes on how it's actually phrased in context and stuff. But, that's kind of like in the sense of like it has to mean only one thing. And if it doesn't only mean one thing in particular, then it's kind of just the understanding knowledge that all language is realistically just made up. It's kind of like things in a rule set that we come up with, But if the rules don't really matter or apply, then in that sense, the language kind of just doesn't mean anything. And it's kind of impossible to actually communicate with other people, if you kind of can't speak the same language. So that's really all that there is to that. I mean, it is what it is. I love the kind of, freedoms that people are able to come up with in regards to just not only with language, but also in action shows and all that kind of stuff. I mean, like, we have hockey, but am I talking about hockey in the sense of hockey like the sport? Or am I talking about One Piece in the sense of the power system that be? Or am I talking about ki in the sense of a freaking actual key? Or am I talking about the Dragon Ball Z energy of ki, Like, that's all the stuff that's interesting about language and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, it's kind of chaos in the way that we make stuff, but, I guess, borderline, that's America and stuff. But either way, talking about printing press and the stage and actually correlating that to other stuff, holy shoot, I'm going to die. This guy is not going to relinquish his power, is he? Yes, we could just beat him super fast with a supersonic spin dash, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give him a fair shake, okay? But yeah, basically, this stage in a nutshell doesn't exactly... Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those stages that, honestly, it's given the green light to be made because it's most likely one of the old stages in the past that just got canned. And I can see why. It's not because it's not beautiful or anything. It's just simply that fact in itself. It just doesn't have anything really to do with video gaming in general. But then again, that's like, coining the question, hey, what about the first stage? It doesn't have anything to do with video gaming whatsoever. And yeah, you're kind of right about that. Chemical plant zone, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, a lot of these stages, they're mainly just imaginary and stuff, so I guess I'll just take it for what it is, right? The stage, if you want my final opinion, the stage is allowed to exist, yes. Oh, son of a gun. Alright, fair enough. But anyways, we are doing our awesomeness. And keep in mind, like, with me as an artist, I mean, I keep in contact and understanding of, like, what's real and what's not, and what's traditional, and what's, basically a new idea. And I just take those and I use them as I see fit. Like, I'm not really one to say that, oh, things should always be this way or that way. Like, even when I know, off topic, but even when I created my own comic, it relied on me letting go of what I would find traditionally true about my characters, and thus kind of be okay with the idea that, hey, it's either that my characters would die in my own comic, but the borderline truth of it was that I can't just control everything. I kind of have to let it flow and do its own thing regardless if it makes sense or not. And then you kind of find freedom in that. And then it also creates its own sense of traditional values in some sort, like, almost like if somebody was going to break down my art years later, they would just say, oh, hey, these are the rule sets for how he draws. In reality, I'm not thinking that. Not at all. I'm not thinking of rule sets to follow and other junk. Like, oh, God, hello. I'm just kind of doing my own thing, really. And if I change it up, I change it up. Like, rules are constantly changing all the time. And, I wouldn't even classify my art skills as rules. But I mean, like, relating that to just everything, including, like, media and, fictional stuff. Like, this stuff actually genuinely gets people pissed off if there is no established rule set for how things are supposed to work. There was, like, this whole thing or debate on, like, when the author creates a series as such, and, people want answers to questions that, like, just don't make sense about the series, the author will answer it, but it'll totally contradict something about that series, and thus, with that being the case, it really, like, divides the fan base. And so, out of the very desire of explaining things, funny enough, it just causes for more controversy and stuff like that to happen, which is kind of strange. You ever think about that? Like, one day when God shows up and he's like, what did you expect me to look like, my child? Well, not like that. If you guys know what that is, that's like a straight up South Park reference. Just an episode where, did I just hit him by just being alive? Y'all saw that, right? I'm just hoping that this whole thing records, but that was just really strange. Okay. I did not want to get... Oh, wow. Okay, no, I just ended up jumping at the exact right time. Funny. Funny how that all works out. But I really want to destroy this guy. Interesting. Okay, we did it. We kind of destroyed him. Fair enough. We are awesome. Maybe I'm gonna have to change that thumbnail, I'm not gonna lie, in regards to Supersonic being in this episode. Yeah, well, you know, next one will be Metal Sonic, so that should be pretty cool. I'm gonna make a really standard thumbnail for that. Alright, Eggman, what are you up to? Oh my god, it's fucking Metal Sonic! Which is how everybody reacted to this upon the arrival of Sonic Mania. That time stone is useless now.